In the heart of a quiet African village, surrounded by tall grasses, ancient baobab trees, and a forest older than the oldest stories, lived a young man named Kofi. Kofi was known throughout the village as a fearless hunter. At only 24 seasons old, he had already brought down wild antelope, outsmarted cunning hyenas, and once even chased away a leopard that had wandered too close to the farms. The elders admired his bravery, and the young boys dreamed of becoming like him one day. But beyond his strength and skill, Kofi was also known for something else: his heart. He was kind, respectful, and deeply devoted to the woman who had raised him alone since he was a child, Mama Abena. Mama Abena was no ordinary woman. In the village, people spoke of her with quiet respect. Some said she could feel when rain would come before the clouds even formed. Others whispered that she understood the language of the ancestors. Her small hut always smelled of herbs and burning incense. Dried roots hung from the roof beams, and carved wooden charms guarded the doorway. Whenever someone in the village fell ill or felt troubled by strange dreams, they often came to Mama Abena, and more often than not, she helped them. But of all the people she cared for, Kofi was her greatest treasure. She had protected him since the day he was born, and she knew something about her son that worried her deeply. Kofi trusted people too easily. He believed the world was as honest as his own heart. Mama Abena feared that one day, that innocence would lead him into danger. Unfortunately, that day was coming sooner than she ever imagined. The village of Adumasai was alive with excitement. It was the night of the Harvest Moon Festival, a celebration held once every year when the moon rose full and golden in the sky. It was a time when villagers gathered to thank the ancestors for a good harvest. Drums echoed across the fields. Women carried baskets of roasted maize and spicy stew. Children ran through the crowd laughing as fireflies danced in the warm night air. In the center of the village, a large fire burned brightly. Sparks rose into the dark sky like tiny stars returning home. The drummers sat in a circle, their hands striking the skins of their drums in powerful rhythms that seemed to make the earth itself vibrate. One by one, villagers stepped forward to dance. And when the dancing began, Kofi arrived with his friends. Tonight, his friend Kojo laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. The girls will fight over the great hunter of Adumasai. Kofi rolled his eyes and shook his head. You talk too much, Kojo. But even Kofi couldn't deny the excitement in the air. The music was alive, the food smelled wonderful, and the entire village seemed wrapped in joy. Then suddenly, everything changed. The drumming slowed, the dancers parted, and a stranger stepped into the firelight. Kofi noticed her immediately. She moved with a grace that made the entire crowd fall silent. Her name, the villagers would soon learn, was Nala. Her skin glowed softly under the firelight, and her long braided hair was decorated with tiny silver beads that shimmered as she danced. But it was her eyes that held everyone's attention. They were deep and mysterious, like dark water under a midnight sky. As the drums picked up their rhythm again, Nala began to dance. Her movements were unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. She spun like the wind. Her feet moved lightly across the ground as if she barely touched it. Even the elders leaned forward, watching carefully. But no one watched more closely than Kofi. Something about her pulled at him. It felt as if the world around him had faded away. He didn't hear the laughter of his friends. He didn't hear the drums. All he could see was her. When the dance ended, the villagers erupted into cheers. Kofi found himself walking toward her without even realizing it. Your dance was beautiful, he said. Nala smiled softly. Thank you. Her voice was calm and smooth, like water flowing over stones. I have never seen you before, Kofi continued. Are you visiting the village? Yes, she said. I came from far away. Do you have family here? For a moment, Nala hesitated. Then she simply said, not anymore. Something in her answer made Kofi feel sympathy. No one should be alone, he said warmly. And from that moment, their story began. Later that night, Kofi walked Nala through the village as the festival slowly came to an end. They talked about many things, about the forest, about hunting, about the distant places she claimed to have traveled. Nala seemed fascinated by everything. The baobab trees, the farms, even the quiet huts scattered around the village. "You have a peaceful home," she said softly. "We do," Kofi replied proudly. Finally, they stopped outside Kofi's small compound. Inside, a faint light flickered through the doorway. "My mother is awake," Kofi said. "You should meet her." Nala's smile faded slightly. "Your mother?" "Yes, Mama Abena. She will be happy to meet you." For a brief moment, Nala seemed uneasy, but she nodded. "All right." Kofi stepped inside first. "Mama," he called, "I have someone I want you to meet." Mama Abena emerged slowly from the shadows of the hut. The moment her eyes landed on Nala, everything changed. The air in the room seemed to grow heavy. Mama Abena froze. Her expression hardened instantly. For several long seconds, she said nothing. Then she stepped closer. Her eyes studied Nala carefully. Too carefully. Finally, Mama Abena spoke. "Where did you say you came from, child?" Nala lowered her gaze slightly. "I have traveled many places." Mama Abena's voice grew colder. "That is not what I asked." Kofi laughed nervously. "Mama, you worry too much. Nala is just visiting the village." But Mama Abena ignored him. Her eyes never left Nala's face. Then suddenly, Mama Abena grabbed Kofi's arm and pulled him outside. Her grip was tight, tighter than he had ever felt before. "My son," she whispered urgently, "listen to me carefully." Kofi frowned. "Mama, what is wrong with you?" Mama Abena's voice trembled. The moment that girl stepped into this house, the ancestors began whispering. Kofi blinked in confusion. "What are you talking about?" "That girl carries a shadow," Mama Abena said firmly. "I can feel it. Something ancient walks with her." Kofi sighed. "Mama, you are imagining things." "No," she said sharply. Her eyes filled with fear. "I have lived long enough to recognize danger when it stands before me." She placed both hands on his shoulders. "My son, do not bring that girl into your life." Kofi shook his head. "You don't even know her." "I know enough," Mama Abena replied. "The spirits are restless around her." Inside the hut, Nala stood silently near the doorway, listening, watching, her expression unreadable. Outside, Kofi gently removed his mother's hands from his shoulders. "I respect you, Mama," he said softly, "but you are wrong about her." Mama Abena stared at him. Deep sadness filled her eyes. "You think love is always a blessing," she said quietly. "But sometimes," she looked toward the hut where Nala waited. "Love arrives wearing the face of a stranger." A cold wind suddenly passed through the village. The fire from the festival had nearly burned out, and high above the trees, the full moon watched silently. Mama Abena turned toward the small shrine beside her hut. Without another word, she began lighting dried herbs. Smoke curled slowly into the night air. She whispered ancient prayers to the ancestors, because deep in her bones, she felt something terrible had just entered their lives. And far away, beyond the village, in the dark heart of the forest, something ancient had already begun to awaken. In the days that followed the Harvest Moon Festival, the village of Adumasai could talk about little else but the mysterious woman who had appeared beneath the firelight. Some spoke of her beauty. Others wondered where she had truly come from. But for Kofi, the answer was simple. He had fallen deeply, hopelessly in love. Every morning after the festival, Kofi found excuses to see Nala. Sometimes they walked along the riverbank where tall reeds swayed gently in the wind. Other times they sat beneath the massive baobab tree at the edge of the village, talking long after the sun had disappeared behind the hills. Nala told stories of distant lands, places where rivers flowed like silver snakes across endless plains and forests, where trees were so tall they touched the clouds. Kofi listened with fascination. He had never traveled beyond the nearby hunting grounds, but through Nala's words, the world suddenly seemed much bigger, and somehow much more mysterious. But while Kofi's heart grew lighter each day, Mama Abena's heart grew heavier. From the moment Nala entered their lives, Mama Abena felt a quiet disturbance she could not ignore. At night, her dreams became troubled. She saw shadows moving through the forest. She heard distant whispers carried by the wind. And each time she woke, the small fire in her hut had burned low, even though she remembered feeding it more wood before sleep. One morning, while Kofi prepared his hunting spear outside the hut, Mama Abena stepped out to join him. Her eyes looked tired. "My son," she said softly, "you spend much time with that girl." Kofi smiled. "Her name is Nala, Mama." Mama Abena nodded slowly. "Yes, Nala." She hesitated before speaking again. "You have known her for only a few days." "That is true," Kofi admitted. "And yet," Mama Abena continued carefully, "your heart seems to have already chosen her." Kofi looked up at the bright sky and laughed gently. Sometimes the heart moves faster than the mind. Mama Abena did not laugh. "My son," she said quietly, "the fastest rivers often hide the deepest currents." Kofi leaned his spear against the wall and turned toward her. "You still believe she brings danger?" Mama Abena sighed. "I do not believe it," she said. "I feel it." Kofi walked closer and placed his hands gently on his mother's shoulders. "You taught me to be brave," he said kindly, "not to fear shadows that may not exist." Mama Abena looked at him with sadness. "Bravery is good, my son," she replied, "but wisdom knows when to step away from darkness." But Kofi had already made up his mind. A few weeks later, he did something that shocked the entire village. He announced that he would marry Nala. The news spread quickly through Adumasai. Some villagers celebrated the union, believing the beautiful stranger had brought good fortune to the young hunter. Others were not so sure. At the elders' meeting hut, quiet murmurs filled the air. One elder rubbed his gray beard thoughtfully. "That girl arrived from nowhere," he said, "and now she becomes the wife of our finest hunter." Another elder nodded slowly. Strange things sometimes wear beautiful faces. But in the end, no one could stop the marriage. Kofi had chosen, and tradition respected a man's right to follow his heart. The wedding took place beneath the great baobab tree at sunset. Women sang joyful songs. Drums echoed across the fields. Children danced in circles, laughing loudly as dust rose beneath their feet. Nala wore a flowing cloth of deep red, decorated with golden patterns that shimmered in the evening light. She looked radiant, almost otherworldly. Kofi stood beside her, smiling proudly as the village elder joined their hands together. "May the ancestors bless this union," the elder declared. "May love guide their path." But as the villagers celebrated, one person stood quietly at the edge of the gathering. Mama Abena. Her face remained serious. Her eyes never left Nala, and when the wind shifted, carrying the scent of burning herbs from Mama Abena's pouch, Nala briefly turned her head. Their eyes met. For a split second, something strange passed between them, a silent understanding. Then Nala smiled again as if nothing had happened, and the celebration continued late into the night. At first, life seemed peaceful. Kofi and Nala moved into a small hut near the edge of the village. Every morning, Kofi went hunting while Nala helped the women gather water or prepare food. She was polite, quiet, respectful. The villagers slowly began to accept her. But within a few weeks, something strange began to happen. It started with the animals. The chickens, which normally crowed loudly at sunrise, suddenly fell silent. Even the village dogs seemed uneasy, often staring toward the distant forest and whining softly. Then the hunters began returning from the forest with empty hands. One evening, Kofi and his friends sat near the cooking fires discussing the strange change. "I followed fresh antelope tracks all morning," Kojo complained. "But they disappeared as if the animal vanished into thin air." Another hunter nodded. "The forest feels wrong," he said. "Too quiet." Kofi frowned. "The forest has always provided for us." Kojo shook his head. "Not anymore." But the strange events did not stop there. One morning, the villagers noticed something even more unsettling. The river had grown unusually quiet. Normally, its waters rushed loudly over the stones. Now it flowed slowly, almost silently, as if something upstream had disturbed its spirit. The elders gathered again beneath the meeting hut. "This is not natural," one of them said gravely. "The ancestors are unhappy." Another elder nodded. "Something has changed in the balance of the village." Meanwhile, Mama Abena continued watching carefully. She noticed small details others ignored. Every morning, Nala woke later than the rest of the village. Her eyes often looked tired, and her feet were always covered in red earth. Not ordinary dirt. Red earth from a place every villager knew well. The Forbidden Forest. No one in Adumasai entered that forest. Not hunters. Not farmers. Not even the bravest warriors. The elders believed ancient spirits lived there, spirits older than the village itself. One evening, as the moon began to rise, Mama Abena saw something else. Nala quietly stepped out of her hut. She glanced around to make sure no one was watching. Then she began walking toward the tall grass beyond the village, toward the dark outline of the Forbidden Forest. Mama Abena's heart pounded. She whispered softly to herself, "The shadow moves at night." But she said nothing. Not yet, because she needed proof. Night after night, the same thing happened. When the moon rose high, Nala disappeared. Kofi never noticed. He slept deeply after long days of hunting. But Mama Abena remained awake, watching, waiting, and praying. One night, she finally saw something that made her blood run cold. As Nala walked through the tall grass, the wind suddenly stopped. The insects fell silent. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. For a brief moment, Nala turned toward the darkness of the forest and whispered something in a language Mama Abena had never heard before. Then she disappeared among the trees. Mama Abena slowly closed her eyes. "The ancestors were right," she murmured. Back in the village, Kofi slept peacefully, dreaming of a happy future with the woman he loved. But beyond the fields, deep inside the Forbidden Forest, something ancient was beginning to stir. And very soon, Kofi would discover the truth his mother had tried desperately to protect him from. The nights in Adumasai had begun to feel different. Not colder, not darker, but heavier. It was as if the air itself carried a quiet warning that no one could quite explain. The villagers felt it when they walked through the farms at dawn. They felt it when the wind passed through the tall grasses at sunset. Even the children sensed it, clinging closer to their mothers when night began to fall. But the one person who refused to believe anything was wrong was Kofi. To him, life had never seemed more complete. He had a wife he adored. His home was peaceful. And although hunting had become strangely difficult lately, he believed the forest would eventually return to normal. After all, the forest had always been unpredictable. Sometimes it gave. Sometimes it withheld. That was simply the way of nature. But Mama Abena knew better. And the weight of what she suspected was becoming too heavy to carry alone. One evening, as the sky turned deep orange and the sun slowly disappeared behind the hills, Mama Abena approached Kofi outside his hut. He was sharpening his hunting spear with slow, careful movements. "Kofi," she said quietly. He looked up and smiled. "Mama, come, sit." But she did not sit. Instead, she stood still, watching him. "My son," she began, "I must speak with you again about your wife." Kofi sighed gently. "Mama, I know you do not wish to hear this," she continued firmly. "But you must." Kofi set the spear aside. "What troubles you now?" Mama Abena lowered her voice. "Every night, Nala leaves the village." Kofi blinked. "What?" "She walks toward the Forbidden Forest." Kofi frowned. That cannot be true. I have seen it with my own eyes. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Kofi shook his head. You must have mistaken someone else. Mama Abena's eyes hardened. I may be old, my son, but I am not blind. Kofi stood up slowly. If Nala goes walking at night, perhaps she simply cannot sleep. To the forbidden forest? Mama Abena asked sharply. Kofi hesitated, but only for a moment. You have always feared that place too much. Mama Abena stepped closer. That forest existed before this village was built, she said. Even the elders avoid it. But Nala is not from here, Kofi replied. That is exactly why you should be careful, Mama Abena whispered. Kofi rubbed his forehead. Mama, I love her. Mama Abena's expression softened. I know. And love, he continued, requires trust. She looked into her son's eyes for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. If you trust her so completely, she said, then follow her tonight. Kofi frowned again. What? See for yourself where she goes. Kofi wanted to argue, but something in his mother's voice stopped him. For the first time, a small seed of doubt began to grow inside him. That night, the village fell into its usual quiet rhythm. Cooking fires burned low, children drifted into sleep, and the moon rose slowly above the trees. Kofi lay beside Nala in their hut, pretending to sleep. Her breathing remained steady for a long time. Then finally, she moved. Carefully, quietly, she slipped out from beneath the blanket and stood. In the faint moonlight that entered through the doorway, Kofi watched her tie a small pouch around her waist. Then she walked silently outside. Kofi waited several heartbeats. Then he followed. The night air felt strangely cold. From a distance, he saw Nala walking through the tall grass, heading exactly where Mama Abena had said, toward the forbidden forest. Kofi's chest tightened. Maybe she was simply walking to clear her mind. Maybe she just enjoyed the quiet of the night. Yes, that must be it. Still, he continued following her. Quietly, carefully. The closer they came to the forest, the quieter the world became. The insects stopped chirping. The wind stopped moving. Even the tall grasses seemed frozen in place. Kofi felt a chill crawl up his spine. The trees of the forbidden forest rose like dark giants against the sky. Their branches twisted in strange shapes, blocking much of the moonlight. Nala stepped between them without hesitation. Kofi paused at the forest's edge. His entire life, he had been warned never to enter this place. Even the bravest hunters avoided it. But tonight, his wife had walked inside, and he needed to know why. Taking a deep breath, Kofi stepped into the forest. Immediately, the air changed. It smelled older, damp, ancient. The ground beneath his feet felt soft with layers of fallen leaves. Ahead of him, Nala moved deeper between the trees. Kofi kept his distance, careful not to make a sound. After several minutes of walking, the trees began to thin. A clearing appeared ahead. Nala stepped into the center of it. Kofi quickly hid behind a thick tree trunk at the edge of the clearing. What he saw next made his heart nearly stop. Nala knelt on the ground. From the small pouch tied at her waist, she pulled out a handful of white powder. Then she began drawing strange symbols in the dirt. Large circles, curved lines, marks Kofi had never seen before. The moonlight seemed to grow brighter above the clearing. Nala stood inside the symbols she had drawn. Then she raised her hands toward the sky and began to chant. But the voice that came from her mouth was not the voice Kofi knew. It was deeper, older, almost echoing. The words sounded ancient and unfamiliar. The air around the clearing began to tremble slightly. The trees rustled even though there was no wind. And then, something impossible happened. The ground began to move. At first, Kofi thought it was his imagination. But then he saw it clearly. The soil inside the clearing was shifting, cracking, breaking apart. Slowly, Shapes began rising from beneath the earth. Bones. Old bones. Animal bones. Human bones. They pushed upward through the dirt as if something below was forcing them to the surface. Kofi's hands began shaking. "What is this?" he whispered. But the chanting continued. Faster now. Louder. The shadows around the clearing began twisting unnaturally. They stretched across the ground like living creatures. Then suddenly, Nala stopped. The clearing fell completely silent. The bones stopped moving. Even the air seemed frozen. Slowly, very slowly, Nala turned her head. Her eyes looked directly toward the tree where Kofi was hiding. His heart slammed against his chest. For a moment, he hoped she hadn't actually seen him. But then she spoke. "You were not supposed to see this." Her voice was calm, cold, and completely aware of his presence. Kofi stepped out from behind the tree, his mind spinning. "Nala, what is happening?" The woman he loved stared at him quietly. The gentle warmth he had always seen in her eyes was gone, replaced by something ancient, something powerful. "You should have stayed in your bed, Kofi," she said softly. He looked around the clearing, at the bones scattered across the ground. "At first," he said slowly, "I thought my mother was simply afraid." Nala said nothing. But now, he continued, his voice trembling slightly, "I do not understand who you are anymore." For a long moment, Nala simply watched him. Then she sighed. A tired sound, almost sad. "The truth was always coming," she said. Kofi took a step closer. "What truth?" The wind suddenly began moving through the clearing again. The shadows stretched longer across the ground, and Nala's eyes seemed to glow faintly under the moonlight. "You married a stranger," she said quietly, "and strangers often carry secrets." Kofi's voice grew firm. "Then tell me." Silence filled the clearing. Finally, Nala spoke again. "You followed me into a place where your ancestors swore no villager would ever return." She gestured toward the bones. "These are not just bones, Kofi. They are memories." Kofi felt his stomach twist. "What are you talking about?" Nala's expression darkened. "Long before your village existed, long before your people built their homes on this land, another people lived here. The wind grew stronger. And your ancestors," she continued slowly, "destroyed them." The wind rushed through the clearing like a warning whispered by the forest itself. Kofi stood frozen, staring at the woman he thought he knew. The moonlight revealed a face that looked the same, yet somehow completely different. The warmth that once lived in Nala's eyes had vanished. In its place was something ancient, something that felt older than the trees surrounding them. Kofi struggled to steady his breathing. "What are you saying?" he asked. Nala slowly stepped out of the strange symbols she had drawn in the dirt. The bones scattered across the ground seemed to tremble slightly as she moved, as if responding to her presence. "Long ago," she said quietly, "before your people built this village, before your ancestors planted their first crops here, this land belonged to another clan." The wind stirred the leaves above them. They were known as the children of the forest spirit. Kofi frowned. "I have never heard of them." "That is because your ancestors erased them from the stories," Nala replied calmly. Her voice carried neither anger nor sorrow, only truth. They lived in peace with the forest. They protected it. They honored the spirits that lived within it. Kofi looked around the clearing again, uneasy. Then what happened to them? Nala's eyes darkened. "Your ancestors came." The words fell heavily between them. "They feared what they did not understand," she continued. "The rituals, the connection between our people and the spirits." "Our people?" Kofi asked. Nala held his gaze. "Yes." The realization slowly crept into Kofi's mind. "You are one of them." Nala nodded once. "My clan was hunted." Her voice remained calm, but the air around them felt colder. "Your ancestors believed our power was dangerous. They burned our homes. They destroyed our sacred grounds." She gestured toward the bones rising from the soil. and those who survived were buried beneath this forest. Kofi's stomach twisted. That cannot be true, he said quietly. But it is, Nala replied. The forest fell silent again. Even the wind seemed to pause. Kofi tried to piece together everything he was hearing. If that happened long ago, he said carefully, then how are you still here? Nala turned toward the center of the clearing. The moonlight illuminated her face fully now. My bloodline survived, she said. Barely. Her eyes drifted toward the bones scattered across the ground. The spirits of my people never rested. Kofi's voice became tense. So you came here for revenge? Nala looked back at him. For justice. The ground beneath them shifted again slightly. Small cracks spread through the dirt. Centuries ago, Nala continued, the last elders of my clan placed a curse upon this land. Kofi felt a chill crawl up his spine. A curse? Yes. Her voice dropped lower. The curse could not awaken while the village remained protected by the ancestors who built it. Kofi suddenly understood. The shrine, the prayers, the rituals Mama Abena performed. They sealed something, he whispered. Nala nodded slowly. Your ancestors created spiritual barriers to keep the forest spirits trapped. Kofi's heart pounded harder. Then, why come now? For the first time, a faint sadness appeared in Nala's expression. Because those barriers have weakened over time. And because, she hesitated briefly, there was one final step required to break them completely. Kofi's voice trembled slightly. What step? Nala's gaze locked onto his. A union. Silence fell again. Kofi's mind raced. Then the terrible truth struck him. Our marriage. Yes, Nala said softly. You are the son of the village's spiritual guardian. Kofi thought of Mama Abena instantly. The blood of the protector flows through you, Nala continued. When you chose me as your wife, the final barrier began to crumble. Kofi stepped backward. You used me. The words felt bitter in his mouth. Nala did not deny it. I needed someone from the bloodline of the village protectors. Her voice softened slightly. But I did not expect. She stopped. Expect what? Kofi demanded. To care about you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension between them filled the clearing like thick smoke. Kofi's chest tightened painfully. You lied to me from the beginning. I told you only what you were ready to hear. Nala replied quietly. That is not the same as truth. The wind suddenly surged through the clearing. The bones scattered around them began rattling softly, as if responding to Kofi's anger. Nala glanced down at them. It is too late now. Kofi's heart dropped. What do you mean? The spirits are already waking. At that moment, a low rumbling sound echoed deep beneath the forest floor. Kofi turned toward the trees. The ground trembled again. What is happening? He asked. Nala's voice was calm but firm. The curse is beginning to rise. The rumbling grew louder. From deep within the forest, a strange echoing howl filled the night. Not an animal, not human, something older, something restless. Kofi's breathing became shallow. If the curse awakens, what will happen to the village? Nala's eyes held no hesitation now. The spirits of my ancestors will reclaim this land. Kofi's voice cracked. And the people? Nala did not answer immediately. Finally, she said quietly, the village will fall. The words struck Kofi like a spear. You would destroy innocent people for something that happened generations ago? Innocent? Nala asked softly. The land remembers what was done here. But the villagers today had nothing to do with it. The spirits do not forget, she replied. Kofi shook his head in disbelief. My mother tried to warn me. Nala looked toward the distant outline of the village beyond the trees. She felt the disturbance when I arrived. Kofi clenched his fists. She trusted the ancestors. And the ancestors knew what I was, Nala said. Kofi's thoughts spun wildly. He imagined the village burning, children running, homes destroyed. All because he had chosen love over his mother's warning. What can stop this? He asked desperately. Nala's eyes slowly returned to him. For the curse to break completely, one final ritual must be finished. And when will that happen? Kofi asked. Soon. The forest wind howled again. Stronger this time. Branches creaked above them. And once it is finished, Kofi asked quietly, the spirits will rise. Kofi felt the weight of his mistake pressing down on him. You cannot do this, he said. Nala's expression hardened again. It has already begun. The rumbling beneath the ground intensified. Some of the bones in the clearing lifted slightly from the dirt as if pulled by invisible forces. Kofi stared in horror. Then I will stop it. Nala stepped closer to him. You cannot stop something that began centuries ago. Watch me. Their eyes locked. The love that once existed between them now tangled with betrayal, sorrow, and something neither of them could fully name. You still care about me, Kofi said. Nala did not respond. That hesitation in your voice. I heard it. The forest trembled again. You should leave this forest, Nala said quietly. Before the spirits rise. Kofi shook his head. My people are in danger. He turned toward the village. I will not abandon them. Behind him, Nala's voice softened. Kofi. He paused. But he did not turn around. You were never meant to be part of this war, she said. Kofi finally looked back at her. But now I am. The wind roared through the forest once more. And far beyond the trees, the distant lights of the village flickered beneath the moon. Unaware that something ancient had begun moving beneath the earth. Something that would soon rise from the shadows of history. And this time, it would not remain buried. The forest trembled like a living thing. Deep beneath the earth, something ancient was awakening. The ground around the clearing pulsed softly, as if the land itself had begun to breathe. Kofi could feel it beneath his feet. A slow, powerful vibration spreading through the soil. The bones scattered across the clearing rattled together like dry leaves in the wind. Behind him, Nala stood silently. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The truth had finally been revealed, and it hung heavily between them like a storm waiting to break. Kofi slowly turned to face her again. You said the ritual is almost complete. Nala nodded once. The curse has waited for generations. The spirits are restless. Another deep rumble rolled beneath the forest floor. In the distance, a strange echoing cry rose from somewhere deep within the trees. Kofi's chest tightened. That sound. The first of them is waking, Nala said calmly. Kofi clenched his fists. If the spirits rise, the village will be destroyed. Yes. Her answer came without hesitation. Anger flared inside him. Innocent people will die. Nala's voice remained steady. Innocent people died here long ago too. Kofi stepped closer to her. That was the past. The past never disappears, Nala replied softly. It waits. The ground shook again, this time stronger. Small cracks split through the earth around the clearing. Faint whispers seemed to drift through the forest air. Not voices exactly, more like echoes of something ancient trying to speak again. Kofi looked toward the direction of the village. His home. The people he had grown up with. The elders who had taught him how to hunt. The children who chased each other through the fields. All of them sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger creeping toward them. And suddenly, Kofi understood something that filled him with dread. His mother had seen this coming. Mama Abena's warning echoed loudly in his mind. That girl carries a shadow. Kofi swallowed hard. I made a mistake. Nala watched him quietly. I should have listened to my mother. The wind rustled through the trees. You followed your heart, Nala said. And now my heart has placed my entire village in danger. Nala did not deny it. For the first time since revealing the truth, uncertainty flickered across her face. You were never meant to carry this burden, she said quietly. But I do, Kofi replied. Another rumble shook the forest. This time, something moved beneath the cracked soil. A skeletal hand slowly pushed up through the earth. Kofi stared in horror. The bones clawed upward slowly, dragging themselves free from the dirt. More cracks spread across the clearing. More bones began rising. The spirits of the buried clan were awakening. Kofi turned sharply toward Nala. How do I stop it? She hesitated. You cannot. There must be a way. Nala shook her head. The ritual has already begun. Then how do I break it? Kofi demanded. Nala's eyes searched his face. If the ritual is interrupted now, what? The spirits will remain trapped. Hope flickered inside him. Then that's what I will do. Nala's expression darkened. You don't understand the cost. I don't care about the cost. You should. The bones around them continued rising from the ground. Some stood halfway upright now, animated by unseen forces. The air in the clearing grew colder. If the ritual is broken, Nala said slowly, the spirits will need a new vessel to seal the curse again. Kofi frowned. What does that mean? Nala's voice dropped to a whisper. A living soul must take their place. Kofi felt the meaning immediately, and that soul will never leave the forest. Silence fell between them. Kofi looked around the clearing again. The rising bones, the swirling shadows, the restless whispers. Then he thought of the village and his mother, Mama Abena, sitting beside her small shrine, burning herbs and praying to the ancestors, trying to protect everyone, even him. Kofi took a slow breath. Then the choice is simple. Nala stepped toward him. No, but Kofi had already decided. My people must live. Nala grabbed his arm suddenly. You don't know what you're choosing. I do. Her voice trembled for the first time. You would give your life for the same people whose ancestors destroyed mine? Kofi looked into her eyes. I would give my life for the people who raised me. The ground shook violently. One of the skeletons pulled itself fully from the earth. Others followed. The ritual was nearing completion. Kofi, Nala said urgently, once you take their place, you will become part of the forest. I know. You will never see your mother again. His chest tightened, but he did not hesitate. Tell me what to do. For several seconds, Nala simply stared at him. Her expression filled with emotions she could no longer hide. Regret, sorrow, and something deeper. Finally, she stepped aside. The ritual circle. She pointed to the symbols drawn in the dirt. You must stand in the center. Kofi walked toward it without fear. The skeletal figures around the clearing continued rising, their hollow eye sockets glowing faintly with pale light. What happens next? He asked. Nala swallowed. You must break the final symbol. Kofi looked down at the markings on the ground. He raised his foot, but before he stepped forward, he paused. Nala. She looked at him. Did you ever love me? The question hung in the air like a fragile thread. For a moment, the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Then Nala answered softly, Yes. Kofi nodded. That is enough. And with that, he stepped forward. His foot crushed the final symbol. Immediately, a blinding surge of wind exploded through the clearing. The skeletons froze. The glowing light inside their hollow eyes flickered violently. The ground roared as if the earth itself were screaming. A powerful force surged upward from the soil. It wrapped around Kofi like a storm. He felt the spirits pulling at him. Ancient, restless, furious. Then suddenly, everything stopped. The skeletons collapsed back into lifeless piles of bone. The cracks in the ground sealed themselves. The whispering voices faded into silence. The forest became still once more. But Kofi remained standing in the center of the clearing, completely still. His eyes now glowed faintly with the pale light of the spirits. Nala stepped forward slowly. Kofi. He did not respond. The forest had claimed him. He had become the new guardian, the living seal that held the ancient curse in place. Tears filled Nala's eyes. She reached out but stopped before touching him. The man she loved was gone. The forest had taken him. Far away, in the village of Adumasai, the wind finally calmed. Mama Abena sat quietly beside her shrine. The herbs she had been burning suddenly stopped crackling. The air felt peaceful again. She looked toward the distant forest, and somehow she understood. A single tear rolled down her cheek. My son. Years later, the elders of Adumasai would tell a story to every child in the village. A story about love, a story about sacrifice, and a story about the wisdom of those who came before. They would always end the tale the same way. Listen when the elders warn you. Because sometimes the price of ignoring wisdom is greater than you can ever imagine. And deep within the forbidden forest, a silent guardian still stood beneath the ancient trees, watching, waiting, protecting the village he once called home.